I have had judges say yes, and I have had judges say no.
Fantastic. Family law.
Yep.
Texas.
Texas.
Go. Welcome back, guys, to Cases and Cocktails. This is episode 13, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about divorces and military and understanding how all that works. And today we've got a special guest, Jillian French, the one, the only. Jillian's here today. She's going to help us go through that. She's got a lot of experience with military divorces, and we'll kind of go through that. First of all, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Fantastic?
Yes.
Awesome. You excited?
Very excited.
Are you ready to drink some bourbon?
I just found out, not really her fave.
Oh, there you go. All right, there you go.
We'll see some funny faces if I do.
We'll go do that here in a second. Before I get there, my beautiful wife, Janice, how are you doing?
Good.
Good. Are you excited? Mm-hmm. I know this is your fave.
Yeah.
This is your jam. This is your jammy jam. All right, here we go. Tell us a little bit about the drink we got today.
Buffalo Trace 75, which means it's just Buffalo Trace bourbon, simple syrup, and lemon.
Nice. I'm excited. You? Mm-hmm. Your favorite, or
I haven't tried it yet.
you're more old-fashioned?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm sure it's good.
All right, you're good with it? All right, let's try it. See how this goes. Buffalo. I can do Buffalo.
Ooh.
She said, woo.
Ooh.
Woo. Don't fall off the chair. All right. If you get done with that one, you just take it straight out of the bottle. Too,
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fantastic. All right. Jillian, you're here today. Talk about a little bit of military divorce.
I am.
Speaking of Jammy Jam, this is your Jammy Jam.
This is my jammy jam. Yes. I sort of fell into it, if you will. My first job out of law school was in Bell County at Texas, which is where what's now Fort Cavazos is. And I knew nothing.
Yeah. Did you live in K-Town?
No.
You didn't live in Killeen?
No, I lived in Pflugerville and I drove.
Oh, you're not. What?
Yeah.
You didn't even immerse yourself.
I stayed sometimes with my paralegal who lived in K-Town.
Oh, nice.
So there's some of that. But I didn't know anything. And I remember the first time I looked at an LES, which is the military version of a pay stub.
Right.
And there's all these letters on it. And I went to my paralegal and I was like, what is BAS? What do these mean? And
Right,
she was the one that was like, oh, it's this is housing, this is the allowance they get for like clothing, food, whatever. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sure, whatever you say. Right.
It makes sense. So then I just made myself a binder of, okay, here's my military secret sauce binder of everything I need to know, because I had to really educate myself on how to do this. And then doing a military retirement division order was a whole other
circus.
Circus. So it was a lot to learn as a new attorney.
I can only imagine. I've been there. Well, I'll be honest with you. I've been there. I've done it. I've been in the same situation.
Yep.
I want to say this first and foremost. It's very important. Anytime you're going through a divorce, there's a lot of nuance, right? We all three of us, right? This is, a lot of nuances, a lot of minutia that you got to deal with. But when you're talking about a military divorce, it's extremely important to understand all the minutia because there's a lot of ramifications. You don't get it right.
And there's no going back.
Right.
So you can't go back and fix it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I got to say this for me, I'll never forget the first time I had some military clients. This is back in like 2011, 2012. And they would just, like you said, they would just ramble these acronyms or these, the DD-240 or the BAH and all that. And you're like, okay, yeah. So I don't know what that is.
And so, a whole nother language.
But they know exactly, because it's military life, right? They know what these things are.
Right.
And as a litigator, as a divorce attorney, if you don't, you're kind of screwed. Right.
Or they've talked to we used to call them the barracks lawyers.
Right, 100%.
Where they're friends, it's like, oh, let me tell you how this works.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. We're not doing that. So, you have to then kind of overcome there's a lot that they do know.
Yeah.
And being a service member, there's a lot that you learn. But the thing that you don't necessarily learn and you should not try to do yourself is especially the retirement part.
Exactly.
Because what you think you know about the retirement is not actually how it plays out, because you are in civilian court.
Right.
You are not in military
court. Right.
So you have to do things the way that civilian court does it.
And you're trying to translate, right? You're trying to translate the military world with the civilian litigation side, family code, divorce. You're trying to like kind of marry these things, and it's not just that it's not round. It's not round pegs and round holes, right? That makes sense.
Right. Like, I'm pretty sure this is something you guys will ask me about, but like one of the biggest questions I get from other lawyers even, where they're like, my client is adamant that this is the rule. If it's the 10-10 rule, if we haven't been married for 10 years, they don't get any retirement. And I'm like, no, that's not how that works. What happens with that is they have this Department of Financial Accounting Services, DFAS. DFAS will pay that ex-spouse directly their portion of retirement if they were married for 10 creditable years of service. And I say creditable because reserve 10 years and active duty 10 years are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, no, they still get it. It's just you have to pay them directly, so you get to write that check yourself and send it to them every month.
Yeah.
How exciting.
Oh, yeah.
And so then it's just, they're like, no, that's not it. Okay, I'll send you the stuff because
I didn't make it up today, right? Yeah.
For us as attorneys, regardless of how much experience we have, if you haven't had the experience specifically in the military divorces, it's like a whole nother area of law, which is why before we got Jillian to come over to the dark side and work with our team, we still would hire her to come on just specifically for the military issues.
Just to consult, right?
Right. Well, I have been hired by several law firms to do just the military divorce part of it. So I'm not the person like giving advice to the client. I'm not the person going to court with them. I'm just doing what they call the DRO, the domestic relations order part, for the pension.
Yeah. And so let's break that down just a little bit before we get into the DRO, we get into all the questions, the 10-10 rule, BHS, and all the good stuff. First and foremost, we got you on our team. How cool is that? Like you are here with us, you're on our team. You're board certified.
I'm board certified.
In family law.
Correct.
And you are extremely experienced in the military stuff. How long have you been doing the military stuff?
Since I was licensed, so over 11 years.
Over 11 years. You do full litigation, right? You do child custody cases, divorces, mods, enforcements, everything else. Just a lot of experience in the divorce with military.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And as Janice said, we're thankful to have you here with us. We're excited. But more importantly, let's kind of break down. So that is, obviously clients come to us. We can help them with that.
Right.
Other law firms as well can come to us, and you can help them on a consultant side, right?
Right. And for the clients that come to us, it's in-house now, so there's no extra payment to someone outside.
To a third party.
It's all in-house now.
In-house. That's exactly right. And that's really the nice part, right? That's really the nice part. Tell us, what are sort of the major things that you see in the military divorce, the major differences between a military divorce and a regular divorce?
It's mostly the benefits.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about the retirement. There is housing allowances that they get. Those can normally go down post-divorce. So when we're talking about child support calculations, okay, well, this is what BH is today. What is it going to be literally the day after we get this divorce granted?
Exactly.
There's insurance benefits sometimes. TRICARE comes into play.
Yeah.
Military IDs need to be returned usually. Depending on what their benefits are, they might be able to maintain commissary privileges, or the kids might have it.
Right.
And then they have to go, okay, well, what are we going to do with the military IDs for the kids? Possession if they're deployed.
Right.
What do you do with that?
Right.
And so there's just a lot of different parts of it that you have to think about, that even if it's somebody who's National Guard or Reserve, if they get called to deployment,
where do the kids go?
Where do we go? Yeah, what do we do?
What do you do?
And then when they come back, are we building in that when they come back, they can kind of have this extended period maybe?
Right.
Because the kids haven't seen them. Do we do electronic communication depending on where they're deployed and if they're in an area that has service?
Right.
Because not all the areas do.
Yeah. And
so it's a lot.
Not only it's a lot, but it also affects the military side. At least my experience, right? Mm-hmm. And Jay, you probably, you've done the same thing. You may have some others, but, just say you go do the deployment or whatever, that triggers certain things on our side, right? In the family court side, right? If you're gone for 6 months, right? Is that abandonment? Are you gone for this? Or, doing that? Is that a material substantial change? These are things that affect, right, what we're doing, and if you don't have it baked in. Right. Does that make sense? Like if you don't have it baked in, then it becomes a problem.
It becomes a problem more so with like who's going to have the access during the time, because the court actually cannot hold someone's military deployment against them as like an absentee parent, which is great because if they get called to deployment and they don't go, they're getting court-martialed.
I don't think you don't have a choice.
No, you go to military jail, and sometimes some of those jails they don't have to tell you where they are. You know.
It's a whole nother world.
It's very interesting whenever your client gets sent there, and as an attorney,
you can't find them.
That happened to me one time, and I was just calling everything. No, this is the prison they went to, and you can't contact them. And I was like, what? Can I write a letter?
Can I get a postcard? Or what?
No. So that's another thing to be aware of is if you have clients that are in the military, hopefully nothing's happening and they're not suffering with PTSD or something happens, but be aware of that.
Yeah.
Also be aware that just because there's a PTSD diagnosis, that does not necessarily mean that this person's a dangerous, violent individual who shouldn't have access to their kids.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, PTSD could be, I have insomnia.
Right.
Great. I have insomnia too.
Right.
Like,
100%.
I don't, it doesn't get held against me.
Right.
You know?
Right. So. Well, and you're 100% right. And the other thing that I see all the time too is that, there's an issue going on in the divorce or the custody case, and one parent or party will call, the chain of command,
first sergeant,
whoever it is, and let them know that this person
called dad.
Right. Oh man. and it's a whole thing, right?
I honestly, I'm so like when I have clients that are the spouse, I just tell them, I'm like, don't do that.
Right. Don't do that. Yeah.
Like if you wouldn't call someone, and some people they would, and this is a whole different issue. If you wouldn't call someone's employer in the civilian world, don't do this. Now, if this person and you're the spouse and they have cut off all your financial resources,
then that's who you go to.
Then you do go to them because they do have an obligation of financial support when they're separated. Then you can open that up. But just know that they're not there to help you with your custody case. The military code doesn't have the authority
to help you. Right. Yeah.
Right.
They're not going to fix it.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, they have their military protective orders, which are their no contact orders. It's not the same. It's not the same as ours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and the only reason it's against that military person is because that's the person the military has control of. So, So like when people come into court and they're like, we have this protective order already. And I'm like, well, your client was the aggressor.
Right.
The no contact order is against mine because mine's the service member.
Right. And they can control that guy or that girl.
This person,
Yeah. 100%.
But not yours. And so just kind of being aware of those things of, okay, that doesn't really mean.
It's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
If an attorney has a case and it is a military case and they don't have any experience in military divorces, at what point should they try to consult with someone like you that has experience?
I think really early.
Okay.
Because especially if there's kids involved, because you get into we're going to go to temporary orders. We need to figure out geographic restriction issues. Are we going to just let the military do the financial support part, or should we ask for child support? Like, what are the ins and outs of that? And then also in the discovery phase.
Right.
When you're saying, hey, I want you to produce these documents. Well, if you don't know what those, like you said, the acronyms, the little form numbers are, you don't know what to ask for.
Right.
And then you go into mediation. Well, we know that when we go into mediation, if we get an agreement, the language that we're using there is oftentimes the language that's then used in the order.
Right.
If you didn't do the language correct or you missed a benefit.
Right. Let me ask real fast in that regard. The Texas Family Law Practice Manual, it's got some language in there, right? That's directed to the military, but that's not always the best language to use. And that's what we use in mediation, right? We'll go to mediation, it's probably even done to a detriment. You go to you go to mediation and you're there, you're trying to work all this bullshit out is what it is. You got all this stuff. And you're like, we're just going to use the language out of the Texas Family Law Practice Manual. When you're talking about military divorce, you can't necessarily do that.
Yeah, not even just that, but the language in the division part where it says, hey, so service member is going to get all of these list of things they put in there.
Right.
And former spouse is going to get their percentage of all these list of things. Guess what's in that list of things? Disability payments.
Right.
Which are non-divisible.
No, you can't do it. Yeah.
And so when you put it in there, now you're creating the question, well, did they waive their separate property right to that?
Right.
And are they now eligible to receive a portion of disability payments that they otherwise wouldn't.
Because once you got the MSA, you got the MSA.
Right.
Right. And you can't undo it.
Or once the decree is entered, the decree is entered.
Right. And you're done. Yeah.
And then sometimes people will come to me, well, they didn't do the calculation right. And I'm like, well,
that's what you agreed to, right?
It's in the order. Yeah. Or they awarded them a percentage of my total retirement upon retirement, not from when I got divorced.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, they did.
Yeah, and there it is.
And it's yep, you're right. That's what the words say.
Right.
And
that's wrong.
Yeah, that's wrong. That is wrong.
Right.
That's kind of a good segue actually into like a frozen benefit rule. So in 2017, or really the end of 2016, we have this what we refer to as the 2017 NDAA. They released rules. NDAA.
All right, I got you.
The NDAA is something that's it wasn't like a one-time deal, but that year they said, hey, everybody in the different states are doing military retirement divisions differently. And it's chaos, and we need to have one method. So they adopted what's called the frozen benefit rule.
Okay.
And the frozen benefit rule is that you get a percentage of the former spouse is entitled to get a percentage of the disposable, i.e. not disability, disposable military retired pay that person would have received if they had retired on the date of divorce. They don't have to be eligible for retirement on that day.
Right.
That's not the thing.
Right.
But it's anything that they earn after that day of the partition, so divorce, MSA, whatever, that's theirs now.
That's separate property.
That's separate property. Yeah. So when someone says, oh, they get 32 point, and they usually will do 4 decimal points, 7.386% of their military retirement upon retirement, you've now just waived separate property.
Right. Because it's going to accrue all the way across. Right. Until they retire.
Right. Until they retire. And so now instead of giving them that 32, whatever the decimals were, percent at year, let's say 12 of military service, now they're getting that percentage at year 23. Right.
And you've been divorced for 11 years.
And you've been divorced for 11 years. Exactly.
And now all of a sudden, here's some money.
Right. Or more money.
Depending on who you represent.
That is, when people call, my first question is, which side do you represent?
Right. The military or non-military, right?
Because depending on your answer, that's going to kind of guide me on
what needs to be done.
What I am going to tell you.
So let me start here. First and foremost, this is something you love.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Is it intentional or is it just happenstance? 4 decimal points. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm done at 4 decimal points.
Yeah.
2 is the most you get out of me.
What's fun and what's challenging is that sometimes I'll do this and I'll contact, they don't do pre-approvals with DFAS, but I'll contact them and be like, hypothetically, if these were the numbers, I've calculated it to this decimal point, like, am I on the same page?
Right.
And I love it when the answer is yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I got it. Or we're trying to figure out dollars and stuff. And when someone gets divorced, if your head hasn't exploded already, get ready. When you are in the military and you get divorced and then that person stays in, there's this whole calculation that happens for the extra time that they stayed in, if there were COLA increases that you would have been entitled to.
Right.
And so there's all this to figure out that percentage that you thought you had was based on their service at that time. So when they actually retire, your percentage is different. And now
it's like vested versus unvested stock with 4 extra layers. I'm out. I'm done.
Right.
And so I remember this case where I did it, and the calculation is like a whole page of a calculation. And I did it one time, and of course DFAS has their systems.
Right. They use it.
And so I told my client, okay, I think this is what it's going to be. We sent it in because they had been married for over 10 years, so DFAS was doing all the things. And they sent it back, and it was like within a penny.
Really?
Different.
Really?
And that was when I was
you
just
were like, I got this.
Yes,
I got this.
I got it. It was great.
I want to ask, best, other than that one, that's a good one, by the way, best memory of helping someone through a military divorce.
Oh, gosh, that's complicated because there's ones where it was a kid issue, and there's ones where it was a property issue that they just didn't know about, right? I do think that it has been a joy to help both service members and non-service members navigate that big change.
Right.
Because a lot of times also we're navigating the fact that they probably moved here due to military
because
service.
of it. Yeah. They didn't pick the Belton Temple Killeen area, right? On purpose.
So how are we navigating this, and how are we doing it in a way that kids can maintain contact with both parents?
Yeah.
How are we doing it in a way? And sometimes, a lot of times people will come in and say, well, I'm the service member, I'm never going to get custody. Right. And that's not necessarily true.
It's not true, right? It's not true, right?
So I would say, if I were to speak to someone, I would say, come in and get your case evaluated, because you never know where you are on that field.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with property. I have a lot of people that come in, what am I going to do about insurance? Oh, well, you've been married for over 15 years, active duty.
Right.
Guess what? You get TRICARE for a year.
Yeah.
I've noticed a lot of people missing out on benefits that they could have been entitled to.
Right.
And just because, not because the other side was being ugly or nefarious or hiding anything.
They just missed it.
They just don't know.
Yeah.
And the attorneys don't know to put it in the order.
Right. And I honestly, what I tell people is, if you're unsure of a benefit you may be entitled to, go to the local DEER's office on post, and they will be able to tell you, usually, they're supposed to be able to tell you, here's everything that you should be asking about.
Right.
Get that information.
Get that information. Yeah. All right. You have used 78 different acronyms already in this deal. I know what some of them are, not all of them, but I want to ask just a couple that I heard, though that way you can kind of explain it. You just used the word DEERS as a DEERS office. Tell me what that is. What does DEERS stand for? Do you know?
I don't remember.
Yeah, off the top of the head. This is a quiz, by the way.
It's a quiz.
Jeez, Brian, you could have prepped her in advance.
I gave her a bunch of bourbon first, and then said, "Here, I'm gonna give you a quiz."
Exactly. But it's where they go for their benefits. Like even if they aren't going through divorce, like any of that, it's where they go get their military IDs renewed. You know, it's just an office that's there to help with those sort of more administrative things.
You just use COLA. That's cost of living adjustments, right?
Yes.
So that's. And how does that play?
So
that's adjusted every year, right?
Not all the time.
Not all the time.
Sometimes the COLA increase is 0%. Okay. It's always a percentage, and it can be a point something percent. It can be whole numbers. It can be anything. Right. And so you have to, every year they determine what it's going to be. They release it. And then the people that are either active duty or getting retirement will get that increase. So it's a percentage of whatever their pay was prior year.
Yeah. BAH and BAS.
Okay. BAH is housing. Okay. So they get an allowance for housing. It is non-taxable. That is still included for child support purposes as a non-taxable resource. And then BAS is what they get for kind of like clothing, food, whatever it is that they're going to use it for, but it's also non-taxable. And that's usually like a few $100s.
Here and there, yeah.
Sometimes if they're deployed, they get hazard pay.
Yep.
But that's not a long-term, that's literally just while they're deployed. And so it's not.
Yeah.
Does that hazard pay get taken into consideration when calculating child support?
I have had judges say yes, and I have had judges say no.
Fantastic. Family law.
Yep.
Texas. Go.
All right. I mean, because it's one of those things where, are we at a temporary order hearing? Are we at a final trial hearing? You know, that kind of plays into it. So
real fast, and we got a whole list of questions. I'm just making them up. So, congrats. But
shocking.
Yeah, right. It's what I do. One of the things, though, seriously, is child support. You hear it all the time. It affects everybody, right? It affects everybody involved. What is calculated when you got a service member? What are we looking to, particularly in that situation, it gets added in or not added in for child support purposes? As far as
yeah. So typically, when they're not deployed and there's not extra things going on, then you have the base pay, which is taxed. You have BAH, which is not taxed, and you have BAS, which is not taxed. And then they have a little expense for TRICARE when they're active duty. It's not very much.
But it's not free. And I feel like that's a misnomer. Like I feel like a lot of people just say, well, it's TRICARE, it's free. Yeah. And though it's not, it's a nominal amount probably. It's still a number.
Yeah. Usually it's less than $50 when they're active duty. But then you have people that are retired and they're paying. Now you have choices. Am I doing TRICARE Prime? Am I doing a lower version of TRICARE? What's the cost? It's usually quarterly. So that's another thing when people say, well, this is my cost. I'm like, yeah, but that's not your monthly cost, my friend.
It's the core. You got to break it out. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So those are the things that typically we're looking at, and we're including that in the calculation.
What about disabilities?
So if someone is, let's say, retired,
right,
and they're getting maybe a portion military retirement, a portion disability,
right,
the disability pay is considered a resource for child support,
okay,
although it's not divisible as property.
Because it's separate property.
Because it's separate property.
Exactly.
However, for spousal maintenance
right.
requests, VA disability is excluded.
Right.
It's not a resource.
It's not a resource that goes into it.
Nope.
So, yeah.
So it does for child support, but not for spousal maintenance.
And this all of this matters because if you don't know,
right,
what happens is your client either ends up with more or less money, right? Regardless of whether you got the service member or the non-service member,
right,
you're going to end up with more or less money, and you could be leaving money on the table. You could be taking money off the table, right? And so it's sort of a situation where, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's nice to get it right.
Right.
Because once you screw it up, you can't really fix it at that point, right? Child support, maybe you modify it down the road, that sort of stuff.
Right.
When we talk about division of the property and retirement and that sort of stuff, you're not going to be able to fix that. So,
right. And that's the nightmare as an attorney, right? Is having done something, not known information and not properly advised or advocated for your client.
Right.
Well, and something as simple as leaving out the word disposable, which is in the standard language,
right, that
you're splitting disposable military retired pay. If you just said military retired pay, so that includes disability.
Exactly. And again, you're back to separate property.
Right, because you go into Chapter 61 of I won't get into all this, but so that's where they lay out disability.
Bore them with the actual statute. That'll be great. We're going to have so many listeners and viewers. It's going to be awesome.
It's great when I'm in the middle of a hearing and I'm like, Jillian, help. I need to know.
Yeah.
How do I win? What's the rule?
Yeah. And sometimes I've had people ask me that, and I'm like, here's the section, here's the highlight part you need to present. There you go.
Right.
And they're just like, oh, yes.
Yeah, and that's what you want, right? Yeah. That's what you want. All right. One other thing that you talked about, you said it very early on in this, was the 10-10 rule. What are we talking about?
So that was where if they are married for 10 years or more of creditable service time, just calculated differently for active duty versus not, then they're eligible to have DFAS pay them their portion of the disposable military retired pay. Okay. If they have been married 9 years, 11 months, and 27 days, they're not eligible. And those payments are now going to be, if they're awarded anything, they're going to be paid directly from the service member when they retire to their former spouse.
So does the military have a number that the non-service member is going to get regardless of what the decree says? Or are we talking about them basically enforcing the decree?
So when someone is not eligible, they did not meet the 10-10 rule, and that person was supposed to be paying them directly and they didn't, then you do an enforcement. Mm-hmm. You have to file an enforcement. And the fun part of that is you then get to go into court and say, Judge, this is my calculation for what should have been paid and wasn't.
Right.
And so that's where we get into that full page long calculation of redoing it when they were divorced while still active versus divorce after retirement. And divorce after retirement is the easiest one. It's just, all right, here's...
You know the numbers. All the numbers are done, right?
You get the DD-214 form that,
oh my God.
you like.
And, oh my God.
And it's all there.
The DD-214.
Yes.
Everybody, Jesus.
It's all there. It's a treasure trove of information.
Yes, that's what I've always said. I've always said that about the DD-214. It's a treasure trove.
It is a treasure trove. It is a treasure trove. Otherwise, then it goes back to the, what if I don't know what I'm doing and I'm in the middle and this person's still serving? What forms do I ask for?
Exactly.
It's different.
Right. What I do is I just write DD everything. And I think that gets pretty close, right?
I think so.
You get all the things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to tell this quick story real fast about how important it is to do this the right way, because I think it's funny. I was a very young lawyer. This was probably 2011, 12. And I had a divorce, and we had a service member on the other side. And there had been a lot of allegations and a lot of bad things that had occurred on an Army base overseas. And I was trying to help my client secure his children and some things. And we went in and we were trying to get documents. And I had tried in all these different capacities through normal discovery, right? Other side.
Yeah.
And I got rebuffed. I got rebuffed. And I got rebuffed.
Yeah.
And the client didn't have a lot of means. And so we were trying to do this as effectively. And so I said, well, instead of doing a contested compel and all this other stuff, I'm going to just subpoena somebody because I can do that
without a judge's signature on it.
Without a judge's signature on it.
Because I'm a lawyer,
right? Because I'm a lawyer.
The rules say I can't.
And again, this is a long, long time ago, very, very beginning of my career, and so I just issued a subpoena, and I think I just wrote it to the Army. And
Dear Army.
and what's fun is the amount of humans that will call you and explain to you why you can't do that.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, that the exact same case, I ended up doing the compel. And there was a judge, and she's retired now, Judge Livingston in Travis County, great judge. I think she's doing mediations now.
Yes.
I haven't used it yet.
Yes.
She actually, we went and did the compel hearing, and it was she ordered him to turn over all the things because she knew, right? Because she understood, right, what was going on in the things, and it worked out that way. But apparently, you cannot subpoena the Army. Just giving that advice.
Yeah. Well,
generally,
so
there's.
As with most things in the law, the answer to that is, well, it depends.
It depends, right?
And you need a judge's signature when you subpoena the federal government.
Yeah, yeah.
And then even then, you get the fun task of, well, how do I get my process server on base to give, because they don't have to let them in.
Right. It's like restricted access. You need a military ID.
Right. So it is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But also the judges, they typically are just like, look, we know that you can access this.
Right.
And especially
they can make the other party do it for you, the service member.
Right. The service member. And there's so much now available through their MyPay system. All of them have a little login. Yeah. Some of them, they just a little fingerprint thing, and they can get into their MyPay
and access to all of it.
And they can access almost all of it. Yeah. And so whenever they're like, oh, I don't know how to do it, I'm like, well, go look at your MyPay.
Right.
And I can't walk it through from there.
Right.
Because I don't have one that I can access regularly.
Right.
But go do it and figure it out.
Right.
But just having that information alone has to be super beneficial.
Right. Well, and then post-divorce, they'll say, well, that you have to provide the other person with your retirement account statement. Well, I can just set up a separate little MyPay where they have limited information in it, and now the former spouse can see that.
Right.
Instead of having to physically mail them the things and documents on top of it. Yeah. So that's also helpful.
Yeah. You could probably do this respectfully for how much longer? 4 or 5, 8 hours, 8 days, 10 days. Is that right?
Depends how detailed you want. You want to walk through the calculation,
yes,
full page?
And you're going to be so excited when you do it, too.
I have a sample DD-214 I want you to walk through. That's what I want you to kind of pull that. And
that's easy.
Oh,
that's easy.
We greatly appreciate you coming on, talking to us about this. Obviously, anyone who wants to contact you to talk about the military stuff, what's the email address they can go to? Your email address.
My email address is Jillian, and that's with a J, not a G.
Right.
At 𝒞𝒶𝓈𝒞𝓈.com.
And they can always call us directly. We can get you over there to consult with other attorneys to help service members, non-service members, and obviously as a client as well. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on today. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that's episode 13 and military and divorces. We greatly appreciate y'all tuning in.
Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.